Hello, I'm Charles Coves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Coves Show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening via podcast. In this week's episode, my big idea is to explore the tough and challenging situations that arise these days and the roles that values, ethics, conscience, and your moral compass play. I consider 5 common examples to help you dig in deeply into the factors that come into play when making decisions. One of them is your good friend who has lost his or her job or his or her career as a consequence of decisions made around health issues, has no income, and needs your help. Do you help that friend or do you hide away? Do you let them rely on government support or do you help them? What are the values that impact on the decision that you need to make and you actually make? You have no choice but to make a decision. The basis on which you choose will help you create your own heaven on earth, and you may well end up in heaven. I'm sure I'll provoke some thinking if you watch and listen intently. For regular viewers and listeners, we have changed the format of the show so that you can get into the content rapidly. The foundational principles of this show and more details about my background now follow each week's unique content. And a further change, my review of what's happened in the week and in my life now comes after each week's unique topic. So let's get into today's big idea. I want to explore some challenging situations in these troubled times in which we live. We have troubles locally, we have troubles globally, and to consider the role of values, of ethics, of your moral compass, of your conscience in how you decide what to do. What's making life challenging these days? Well, clearly, attacks on freedoms, attacks on our way of life, geopolitical issues, global financial crisis, manipulated food shortages, threats of World Health Organization, elections of new governments, as just happened in Australia, all sorts of challenging situations. These challenging situations impact differently on each one of us. So let's look at them. First example, do I get up and exercise at the time I decided last night, or do I stay in bed, sleep in because I don't feel like getting up? What's the value judgment? Well, we're deciding between two values, the value of health, the value of fitness versus the value of comfort and rest. You know, it's lovely staying in bed. What a beautiful place to be. Oh, who wants to get out of bed? Look, I'll do exercise tomorrow. You are making a value judgment. Second example, take the situation of a lawyer or an accountant, but particularly a lawyer, because I was a lawyer for many years and I do some work as a legal strategy consultant now. A client comes in to see the lawyer with a major problem, major distressing situation, but does not have money to pay the lawyer his or her proper, normal commercial rates. This potential client needs help desperately, but hasn't got enough money to pay on normal terms. What's the value judgment? Well, the lawyer's own wealth on the one hand versus ethics. You see, a lawyer might go, I put my wealth ahead of my ethics. or my conscience? Now, conscience is an interesting question because it ties very much into beliefs and moral compass. So all of these words help us to understand the dilemma that we're in when we go, is this just a mere value judgment, or is it deeper than that? And you go into deep ethical questions, and there's a spirituality related to those ethical questions, to that moral compass. And indeed, many religions talk about your conscience, particularly Christianity. What does your conscience say? And what happens if you've got a flawed conscience where you have deluded yourself that the only thing that matters is your own personal situation? Very complex. But the lawyer sitting there who says, I'm not going to do that because it's going to cost me money. I could be doing work for higher paying clients. And this person who has a big dilemma doesn't get help. What are the thoughts that go through the lawyer's head? In the meantime, as I'm thinking about these value judgments, I just want to reinforce how much I value coffee. I'll have to put that into my values list, Julie. Put coffee into my values list. Number 3, a good friend of yours has lost his job. And he's lost his job because he hasn't taken the jab. Do you help your friend or do you ignore your friend? Or this can be your neighbour. Not so much a friend, but a person who lives near you. You don't know them very well, but you do know they're in trouble because she has lost her job and has got a couple of kids. And indeed, Julie and I know someone who, in the dental profession, has lost her job and is couch surfing with 2 children. Do you help this person or do you ignore? What's the value judgment? Well, again, helping this person will cost you money. And if you give away your money, you might be in a less secure position sometime down the future because of all of these risky situations that we are in. You might have money now, but you go, gosh, I've got to preserve my money, so I'm not going to help somebody who needs money now or who needs accommodation now. So you're making a value judgment between your own security, your own comfortable level, your own financial situation versus being of service, versus the value of love. Love your neighbour, as Christ said. Do unto others as you would have done to you. What would you like others to do for you? One of the great principles that I've learnt, I can't remember quite where I first learnt it, is that no one does it alone. Nobody succeeds alone. Indeed, Anthony Albanese, the newly elected Prime Minister, it seems, of Australia, his acceptance speech was all about thank you. Even in politics, they're saying thank you. So, are you going to love your friend? Or are you going to not love your friend? Are you going to choose your own financial security? Is this an ethical question, a moral compass question, a conscience question? Example number 4. I know many dentists see this show, listen to this podcast. What if a dentist does a less than good job? And the dentist knows when he or she has done a good job versus a not very good job. And of course, the patient, it's not so much the patient's satisfaction, the dentist knows, but let's assume the dentist knows that a good job wasn't done and the patient is not happy. What does the dentist do? What's the value judgment involved here? Well, clearly, again, it's a financial decision versus making the patient satisfied, happy, fixing up the less than good job. It's a financial situation, an impact on one's own income versus excellence, versus commitment to service, versus being of service. It's a value judgment, and it's an honesty factor here. So if you value honesty, if your practice says, I value honesty, but you're not honest with your patients. You're not honest with your staff because it might cost you money. It might make you uncomfortable, so you're choosing comfort ahead of honesty. There's the ethical question, the morals of pretending that you did a good job when you know that you didn't. The fifth example, many doctors who have ignored their unique patients and their unique needs and have gone against their Hippocratic oath and done what government has told them to do, of simply treating everybody as the same and imposing government dictates onto those patients. Why did doctors choose to do that? What were the value judgments at play? Security, money versus being of service, loving patients, caring about patients. The needs of the bank manager have taken priority over the needs of the patient. It's very convenient to say, I'm just doing what government told me to do. There's a deep value judgment there because an unjust government law or regulation is not a law or regulation at all. So what is just? Are you interested in justice as a value? I consider that many doctors have absolutely sold out on their Hippocratic oath, an ethical matter of first do no harm. And if you're upset by me saying that, then you better look at your own ethics and your own values to go, what is the truth about the decision that I have made? Have I deliberately ignored matters? You see, that's where conscience can be manipulated. This is where self-awareness is so important, to go, why did I make that decision? What lies at the heart of it? And I'm just reading a wonderful book, The Nazi Billionaires by David de Jong, and it deeply goes into the 1930s in Germany and how family wealth has been passed down the generations from those times to today. And Germans refused to help other Germans in their midst who were Jewish because it wasn't happening to them. Today, stuff is happening to people. It might not be happening to you. What are the values that you're going to apply in your decision? What ethics are you going to put into play? What moral compass is going to guide you? What does your conscience say about what you're meant to be doing? I say you need to be aware of your values, of what your ethics are, of what your moral compass dictates, of what your conscience dictates. And these issues are not taught to any degree in education, has not been taught for the last 30 years. These are deeply spiritual matters. They go to the heart of our human spirit. Applying them is challenging. And if you don't know what they are, then it gets very difficult to apply them. And many times we ignore them because we don't want to make those difficult decisions. And how do your kids decide? What do you teach them about values? I have 5 children. One of my favourite quotes is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear what you say. So as a parent, what demonstration are you giving to your children about making value judgments? I say you can create heaven on earth when you understand your values, when you make decisions based on your values, on your own ethics, on your moral compass. You will experience heaven on earth despite the challenges that we face. And perhaps by creating your own heaven on earth, you never know, if there is heaven when you die, you may well end up there. I wish you wise, insightful, self-aware decision making. So let's look at some resources to help in your consideration of this big idea this week and its relevance to your life and to your decisions. My song this week, since I've been talking about heaven, is by the Bee Gees. And like a lot of these songs, when I start to look at these lyrics, I go, wow, what powerful lyrics. And the poets and the songwriters give us fantastic messages when we deeply consider the words. Well, this week's song is Nobody Gets Too Much Heaven No More. I should go falsetto. Nobody gets too much heaven. How about that for a bit of falsetto? Nobody gets too much love anymore. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb. Oh, you and me, girl, and just contemplate girl being your friend, your neighbour who needs help. Got a lot of love in store, and it flows through you and it flows through me, and I love you so much more than my life. I can see beyond forever. Everything we are will never die. Loving's such a beautiful thing. Powerful words. My spiritual tip is to start articulating your moral compass. This is not an intellectual exercise, it's not a mental thing, this is a spiritual thing. What is your moral compass? What are the guides that help you along along the way to your true north? That's a spiritual exercise. Lots of self-awareness required here, but you have to start somewhere. My book is by John DeMartini, The Values Factor. John is a wonderful, wonderful expert on this question of values. The Values Factor. I know John personally, and he does great work globally. My quote is by Martin Luther King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. How much love is there in the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis? My health tip. This arises from my interview on TNT Radio.live yesterday when I interviewed in the show that I host, the Mind Medicine program. I interviewed Janine Brundle, a health expert. And the message is to eat right for your type. Your blood type dictates what the right thing is for you to eat. Eat right for your blood type. There are 4 basic blood types, O, A, B, and AB. And then there are positive and negative. 45% are the O type, 40% are the A type. If you're an A type, you have to be eating differently to an O type. I heard this a long time ago, but it was a wonderful reminder to me, and I wanted to share that with you. Find out what your blood type is and find out what you should be eating consistent with your blood type. And my spot of humour. You know I love humour almost as much as I love coffee. Oh yeah, I think that's right. Since we've been talking about heaven, this bit of humour is very opposite, obviously. So back in the days before World War I, 2 suffragettes, people who fight for the vote for women, had been put in jail for willfully interfering. With whom? With the police in the enforcement of their duty, which of course is happening today in the freedom fight. One of the 2, a young girl who was involved in this, her very first fracas, was terribly frightened and only with difficulty restraining her tears. The other, a toughened veteran, a bit like Monica Schmidt of Reignite Democracy Australia, a toughened veteran of dozens of demonstrations of interfering with the police in favour of the great cause of votes for women, said, "Don't be afraid, have faith in God. She will protect us." Go the suffragettes. So, think about how today's big idea, can make a difference to your life. A life that I believe you can make heaven on earth, because you are coming from your deeply held spiritual values. My aim for this show is to provoke you, to inspire you, to motivate you, to educate you about ways that you can make this life, this gift that we have, a wonderful experience for you on a day-to-day basis, regardless of the challenges you face. I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube, to this podcast. If you like it, share it with your family, with your friends, with your work colleagues. Sign up for Passion Points to Ponder on covest.com, our corporate website, and charlescovest.com, where you can find details of the self-awareness and passion quest. Being self-aware and being passionate is the key to your success. You can access my books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, on both of those sites. I still keep getting wonderful feedback from people who have read my book. I keep getting emails. It's most heartwarming. So, let's review some key happenings during the week in my life and in the life of the world. Well, yesterday, as I'm recording this, was the Australian federal election on May the 21st, and governments changed. Scott Morrison ceased being Prime Minister and has announced that he won't be standing to be re-elected as leader of the Conservatives, called the Liberals in Australia. Anthony Albanese, raised by a single mum in a government housing commission flat, has become the Prime Minister of Australia. It seems, the question of whether it's a minority or majority government has yet to be decided. In the meantime, we have big geopolitical issues going on, and many people say, well, it doesn't matter who our Prime Minister is, because we are merely tiny little leaves on all of the global tornadoes that are blowing around. Reports are coming in from America of food shortages. I say they have been manufactured for political purposes. We're having debates in America on Roe versus Wade. I say, and I will hold to this, I'm a father of 5 children. It is not abortion after 20 weeks. And laws in Australia, America now allow abortions to happen right up to full term. That is sick. That is murder. Babies are being murdered, and most people are not aware that the laws in Australia allow this to happen. Many children have survived after being properly born after 20 weeks. And for people to say that's not a life, and then to be worried about an animal on the street, and all this nonsense about safety. This is a big issue, everybody, and I'm going to be doing a show on it, but it is not abortion. Stop calling it abortion. It's murder after 20 weeks. There have been cryptocurrency or digital asset currency value collapses, and you start to go, is that manipulation? What's going on? And if you have a lot of cash, is it safe for you to keep your cash in bank accounts? Good piece of advice for you from an expert who said, do not put all your money into one bank account. A bank has the ability to just snaffle it like that. It's just a digital entry anyway. The debt levels right around the world are extraordinary. No one knows how this is going to play out. The current unfunded liabilities of governments around the world are 5 times, a huge number of times of annual global gross domestic product. This is a financial system built on a deck of cards, so be ready for it. And so in the context of what we've been talking about this week of values, you start to go, gosh, how do I look after myself, and how can I possibly be concerned about other people if I'm so worried about looking after myself? Good question. That's where the self-awareness comes in. During the week, Julie and I have been doing our exercise. We're both well, but I'm working huge amounts of time to keep fighting for freedom. I moderate 2 global meetings a week that take some 8 hours a week, plus a string of other meetings, all related to our fight for freedom, because without freedom, you aren't human. And in the meantime, I'm enjoying this gift of life. Each day I enjoy it because I'm pursuing what I'm passionate about. Are you? So, if you're new to the show, stick around for the last part where I go into the foundational principles of the show and my background. Again, thanks for watching, listening, thanks for sharing. And until our next show, next week, may your week be full of health-giving passion, of learning, of fun, of fulfillment, of challenge, and ever-increasing self-awareness. Thanks for being here. Love doing this show for you. Hope you find it of value. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show. Here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Covess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the color of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life.
And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.